Have you ever wondered why we seem to be so drawn to the light, to the glow of a fire, the flicker of a candle, or to a spectacular sunrise? When Charlene and Denise and their extended family came to decorate the sanctuary for Advent, what inspired them to fill the sanctuary with light? What is it about the nature of light that attracts our attention and draws us in? In the Northern Hemisphere, we celebrate Christmas shortly after the winter solstice of December 21st, the shortest day and the longest night of the year. And as people decorate their homes and their churches during the month of December, and the lights of Christmas gradually appear, don't we sense a welcome sense of reprieve from the deep darkness of the season? Perhaps you have heard of or seen the lovely Irish custom to leave a candle burning in the window to light the way for the Christ child on Christmas Eve. May I suggest that we're drawn to the light first and foremost because light penetrates the pervasive darkness of this world. Isn't it interesting that God's very first order of business in the Genesis 1 creation account is the creation of light and the separation of light from darkness? We're drawn to the light because it warms us and comforts us. It illuminates the darkness around us so that we can see clearly where we're going, and so we can appreciate all the nuances of this world's beauty. Light also exposes evil, which explains why those with evil motives often operate under cover of darkness. We still caution our daughters, remember, bad things happen at night. Light gives us a frame of reference, a sense of direction, a true sense of self, and a spirit of hope. Likewise, we are drawn to Jesus himself for the same reasons that we're drawn to the physical light. When he came to us as the babe of Bethlehem, he himself penetrated our spiritual and physical darkness. In John 8, Jesus said, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." Just as the moon has no light of its own, but reflects the sun's light, so believers in Jesus reflect the light of Christ, so that others may see Christ in us. Our final passage today in our Advent series from the book of Isaiah tells us that in addition to being a light to his own people, Jesus will also come as a light to lighten the Gentiles, a light to the nations, a light for us. God's intention and his commission to us is that the good news of Jesus be shared not only with the nation of Israel, but with the whole world. And we read this in one of the most well-known passages in the Bible, John 3:16 and 17. "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved." In each of the texts that we've studied in Isaiah, there have been several layers of meaning. The first applies to the specific historical context of God's people. Isaiah prophesied to his own, a defeated people who found themselves living in spiritual darkness, a people who had broken their covenant with God, and as a consequence, a people that Isaiah prophesied would later be carried off into the Babylonian exile. In addition, Isaiah, in the same text, gives us a prophetic foreshadowing of the coming of the Christ child, the Messiah, Isaiah prophesied that Jesus would come to transform, redeem, and renew God's people, first the Jews and also the Gentiles. And so we read in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 4, a link back to the prophecy in chapter 9 of Isaiah. The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light, and for those who sat in the region and the shadow of death, light has dawned. And then in Isaiah 42, verse 6, we read, I am the Lord, I have called you in righteousness, I have taken you by the hand, and I've kept you. I have given you as a covenant to the people and as a light to the nations, to open the eyes that are blind, to bring out the prisoners from the dungeon, from the prison those who sit in darkness. And today's prophecy in Isaiah 49 also points to the servant of God who is to be a light. His mission is to restore the people of Israel, but also the greater mission is to be a light to the nations, to all the Gentiles. The servant of God is a light so that those sitting in darkness can see and walk in the light of the Lord. Isaiah says, it's too light a thing that you should be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to restore the survivors of Israel. I will give you as a light to the nations, that my salvation may reach to the ends of the earth. As the wonderful counselor, Jesus directs our steps and sheds light on our path. As the mighty God, Jesus gives us the assurance that he is in control and that we have no need to fear. As the everlasting Father, Jesus reminds us that he loves us with an everlasting love. And as the Prince of Peace, Jesus breaks through the darkness of the unknown future and gives us his peace, the peace that passes all human understanding. This morning you have heard from Kira Shanthan. You've heard that he's launching a new group for young adults in January called Fearless Conversations. In offering this ministry, his goal is to reach out to young adults in Scarborough with the light and the good news of the gospel. But what you may not know is that Kira Shanthan is going to St. Louis, Missouri, this coming Thursday, to attend a 5-day student ministry or missionary convention called Urbana. Urbana was once held in Urbana, Illinois, and now it's too big, so it's held in St. Louis, Missouri, but it's still called the Urbana Student Missionary Convention. This missionary convention happens once every 3 years, and it has been held for over 70 years. And in that time, over 300,000 Christian young people have attended this convention. It is designed for college and university students or grads who are seeking God's will for their lives. For young people who are asking themselves, how can we know God's will for us? Or how can we be a light to the nations? And this is the topic for this year's conference, Faithful Witness. As it happens, there are at least 3 of us here, older folks at St. Andrews, who also attended the Urbana Convention when we were Kira Shanthan's age. So we were very excited to hear that he would be attending this year. And I must admit that this news sent me on a little bit of a nostalgic trip backwards to the years when Brian and I also attended the Urbana Convention as newlyweds. We were asking the question, what is God's will for our life together as a couple? When I thought about my most vivid memory of the convention, the metaphor of light is the one that immediately came to my mind. On New Year's Eve, 1976, Brian and I, along with 12,000 other Christian young people, participated in a communion service in a bowl-shaped stadium. This is the picture of the stadium as it is today, and this is where Kira Shanthan will be. But our stadium was bowl-shaped, If you think of a vase of flowers, it was like this. It was the final event of the convention, and it coincided with the ringing in of the new year. After sharing communion, the stadium lights were dimmed, and the presiding minister, who happened to be at the time John Stott, lit one single taper. He then shared his flame with his neighbor, who shared it with her neighbor. And in the stillness of that night, the light from that one candle was shared until the darkened stadium was ablaze with light. Although individually our lights were small and flickering, the sea of light in the stadium was absolutely brilliant. It was a poignant reminder of the power and influence that the Christian community can be when we seek to walk in Jesus' light together. When we left the convention, we went out in the assurance that Jesus was calling us to declare his glory amongst the nations, so that the good news of his salvation might reach to the ends of the earth. Whether we went to a faraway land or served God somewhere close to home, our mission was to reflect the light of Christ wherever we were, so that others might come to know him too, whom to know is life eternal. In the next few days, we will be celebrating the coming of Jesus, the light of the world, into our world. Perhaps over the holidays you will have a chance to take a walk in the moonlight or under a starry sky and to quietly reflect on what the birth of the Lord Jesus means to you personally. How has knowing Jesus made a difference in your life? How has Jesus lit up the darkness for you? And how can you light up the darkness for others because of your relationship with him? Amen.